Welcome to all who enter the land of shadows. Tonight we explore dark creatures found in the bogs. Do not follow the light. The macabre and tales of cryptids has always fascinated me and my baby sister. We love exploring the forest near our hometown, as we have camped in it several times. When either of us go out of town, we try out the local ghost and haunted tours. Comparing pictures, stories, and notes when our paths cross again. So it is of no surprise that we decided to check out a local legend, only an hour or two drive away. For those of you that have never heard of the fairy light or will-o-wisp, take heed. They are mysterious lights that glow over water such as swamps, lakes, and yes, bogs. As you approach the light, it disappears, reappearing farther away. You can never get too close to it, for it will always move away from you. Many explanations try to explain this phenomenon. Gas from decomposing material, the Fae playing tricks on humanity, or perhaps something darker and worse than you really want to know. We heard from a reliable friend that these will-o-wisps can be found in the woodland not far from our home. We packed our bags, some snacks, flashlights, bear spray, and other supplies. Bears are a real threat in Tennessee, and we were near some mountains. It was always best to be prepared. We took my Jeep Wrangler, old, but it would never get me stuck. My reliable transport, baby sister, together, and we were on our way. We arrived late in the afternoon as we parked in front of the woods. The canopy of trees was dense and thick, making the trails darker despite the sun being high in the sky. Bear spray in hand and a revolver on my side, we ventured forth, braving the dark shadows ahead, listening for any signs of predators. My sister had her video recorder ready for proof of the phantom lights. I could smell the water close by, the mud, and the decay with it. For any of you that has ever smelt a muddy lake or pond, the scent is unmistakable. I checked our compass, and we seemed to be heading northwest. Not too long later, we saw a swampy area just ahead of us. Moss covered the trees. Algae covered the swamp. The plants were large here, no doubt hydrated. It had an ancient look, as if we were trapped in an old movie. The scene was creepy, and the smell terrible. Frogs were heard in the background. An owl was letting the world know to be on guard. My sister was the first one to see it. A blue light hovering near the water's edge. It remained still, almost like an illusion. I stepped closer as sister recorded me and the strange light. The phenomenon began to flicker and vanish as I reached the edge. A yard or two further, the light returned, still at the water's edge. I looked back and smiled as my sister smiled, and we knew we were thinking the same thing. We had to get close to these lights. We had to discover what they really are. The game had begun as we followed the spectacle farther down the dark path. I could only get within a foot or two when I lunged at the light, as it simply vanished once again. It appeared again, but now there were two glowing orbs. The two lights circled playfully around each other. I chased them, determined to catch one. They did not disappear, but simply floated farther away. This game went on for an hour until the two orbs stopped. I went to the edge, but they did not move far away. Just a few inches now, floating near the edge of the bog. The orbs beckoned me to enter the dark water. As I followed them, my sister was yelling for me, but I only knew that I could grab one of these orbs and figure out what they were exactly. But they only danced farther away, barely out of my reach. Common sense should have told me to stop, but I ignored them. Something was strange, though. The area was deadly silent. No frogs, crickets, or insects. My sister stopped yelling for me. I turned and noticed she was in the swamp too. Had I traveled so far out? She stopped and was pointing to me, trying to make a sound but could not. Terror was on her face. That disturbed me, but I found that I could not move. Vines had entangled my legs, and I could feel them pulling me now. That's when I felt hands. Slimy, webbed hands. I looked down and saw those two blue eyes staring at me through the nasty looking water. They were the same color as those orbs. Then I was pulled down into the dark abyss. My sister screamed as she tried to run. Hands grabbed her as well and dragged her into the waters. She kicked and fought, but was held under in her dark grave. The camera fell on the ground. Perhaps someone will see it and know our story. I punched and fought, struggling as hard as I could, knowing that if I cannot escape, I cannot help my sister, and we would both die here in the water. Something held me under the water surface. Wet fingers covered my eyes, mouth, and nose as my lungs begged for fresh air. Those blue eyes were the last thing I ever saw. Inside my body, the breath died away. My lungs had stopped. My eyes closed. And then my heart would beat no more. Beware the bog. My family is from the highlands of Scotland. They warned us with many tales and legends from the homeland. I was to never go near the bogs. They were home to a deadly predator that would seduce and drown me as it feeds upon your corpse and eats everything, leaving no evidence of you behind. It is known as a wild spirit, or as my father would call them, the Fae. These creatures took on the appearance of what you would never consider to be dangerous or a threat. When it gains your trust, you will be dragged into the water, never to be seen alive again. I did not pay attention to the stories, although I wish I did. My tale is that of a stubborn little boy. One that never listened to his elders, or thought he knew everything about the world. The tale begins as a beautiful summer day, the wind blowing, and I had plans to go exploring. The bog near my home was a quiet place. Several trees had died there, but the water supply had greatly enriched the land. It held beautiful flowers, such as cotton grass and orange cloudberry. I loved picking the cloudberry. It had a strong, tart taste. While I was picking some cloudberries, I came upon a stallion. It was beautiful, jet black, and muscular. The mane was well groomed, and his coat shined so much. I longed to pet it. The horse saw me there and walked over to me cautiously. It sniffed my hand, and I gave it some berries. I only wish that I could ride such an animal, to gallop through the countryside, the wind in my face, as I would lose myself in more adventures. As if it read my thoughts, the horse nudged me with his nose. It moved closer to me, as if it wanted me to ride it. I did not heed the warnings of my father. Grabbing the mane, I swung onto the horse's back. Once on his back, I was forced to hold on tightly. The black stallion ran at high speeds straight for the bog. I tried my best to let go, but I could not. It was as if my hands were glued to his body. The more I struggled and tried to free myself, I actually felt skin stretching from my hands. I knew I had to get away, for those old tales came back to me, and I knew I was in grave danger if I went into that dark water. As hard as I could, regardless of the pain, I snatched my hands away. The pain was great as I saw blood coming from them. But I was in panic mode, and the water was getting very close and closer and closer. Bleeding, I undid my pants, which thankfully were a size or two too big. Then I slipped out my shirt and painfully fell onto the ground, hurt and bleeding in only my underwear. Blood came from my hands as they throbbed and ached. I rolled into a bush of thick bushes. I wanted to cry, to scream, but I knew if I made a noise, I was dead. I could hear it howling, loud and angrily, as this thing realized I was gone. Water splashed as it raced back to the path. I could hear his breathing, hooves pounding the ground, and finally, the growl. The noise sent shivers up my skin. Once again, I knew if I was found, I was dead. The next sound did not sound like a horse or any animal I have ever heard before. This creature screamed. It screamed like a man would. The echo was not human, not dog, and not wolf. I knew I had to stay hidden. For I feared I would become its next meal. I remember the words spoken by my father. I know what this thing is now. And what seemed like an eternity, I waited. I'm sure it was only a few moments. Then I began to hear a faint cry, a familiar one. It was my father. He shot his rifle in the air, trying to get me to answer him, to let him know I was okay. It did manage to scare the beast away. I got such a bad whooping that day. But I learned my lesson. Never approach someone at bogs, especially a horse. Although it may seem to be a trusting animal, once you hop on his back, or once your skin comes into contact with its skin, you're stuck. The creature will run as fast as it can, taking you into the water to drown you. Once dead, it will consume you. I still wear the scars to this day. My hands patches on my skin looked like I was in a fire. But I know where they came from. And I know that some tales from the old country are true.